Why is snoring one of the most overlooked indicators of bad sleep? And the reason, we just kind of brush it off as a nuisance. It's just snoring. But the thing is, snoring is so much more. It is a sign that there are deeper issues going on underneath and ultimately becoming a gateway to the deadly disease of obstructive sleep apnea. That's why in this episode, I want to cover the actual sounds. I'll get into those in just a moment because maybe you came just for that. But I hope you stick around as well because I want to be able to build on that so you have an understanding of why snoring happens, what it means for your body, what it means about your sleep apnea severity, and of course, what you can do about it. So we're going to go over all of this awesome, great information, the sound waves, the mechanism, what the research says, and of course, what to do about it. That's what we're going to dive into here today. So, like I said, without further ado, I want to give you a preview of the difference between these two with some commentary. And maybe I'll even have you guess. We'll do a little bit of a game. Give me 10 seconds. Is if you were to guess between these two, the sound wave demonstrated on top versus that on bottom, which do you think is just snoring and which do you think is sleep apnea? Do you think it's the top wave, this more continuous noise, or do you think it's this bottom one that seems to be loud and then relatively quiet? Give you 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So the top one is just snoring. This is a typical snoring pattern without apneas. The bottom one has periods of no noise. This is a period of apnea when you're not breathing. So that's what it looks like if you were to look at a sound curve. But what does it sound like? Let's go ahead and do that right here. For the first one, I'll let you listen in and determine for yourself. Pineapple. So that one's a bit more continuous, all right? Maybe, I mean, most people can't look at a sound wave and know what it's going to sound like, but that's what the more continuous nature of isolated snoring is by itself. Now, let's go ahead and listen to sleep apnea snoring. This is what it would sound like. So that's what that would sound like, where it's a lot more active, it's a lot more louder, and then is followed by a period of silence. That's what it sounds like. So what does that mean? So, 'cause it's very important to know this, and especially when 80% of people with sleep apnea snore, and this will tell us how bad your sleep apnea is, and 50% of people who snore have sleep apnea. The reason for this is that this curve here, or this frequency chart, this can turn into the one below it pretty quickly. And the reason for this is that if we look at how the airway acts at night when you're having snoring and or sleep apnea. Normal is just airflow is moving, it's grooving, it's just everything's great. Sleep apnea, there is an obstruction. There is a complete block of air movement. Why these arrows are not appearing on the other side of this. Now, if you're breathing normally, there's minimal noise. If you're completely blocked off, there is minimal noise. The noise happens when you have a partial obstruction. And this will not surprise you. Maybe you just haven't thought of it this way. A full obstruction needs to have a partial obstruction of some sort just before it, right? Like your door needs to be a little bit closed before it's fully closed, right? We're not in some weird quantum world where it's either open or closed. When you have this partial obstruction, there are two main ways that there's going to be noise. The first one is incredibly appetizing, and I'll show you a video graphic of this going on, just demonstrate to you first. The first one, very appetizing, is the flopping of tissue in the back of your airway. Like when I go like that, that's going to be tissue flopping like my soft palate back there, and also some turbulent airflow in the nasal cavity. That's what that is. The second is going to be related to how a whistle or a tea kettle works. And you can have both going on, and many frequently do. So a tea kettle, you have a container, right? A big area with some air, and then it funnels into a smaller area. That is the whistle. Whenever you have the same amount of air trying to go into a smaller area, it will pretty much force that air to compress. And when that happens, there's going to be two things. Friction happens, if you see my mouse, my little hand here, there is friction along the wall of this. That causes noise. And then also from the turbulent airflow, where air is just kind of curving around in that manner, like in a circle, that will lead to the generation of sound as well. That's what happens inside of a tea kettle. Also what happens when you whistle, because I've been told at least, I still can't whistle, you put your lips together and blow. What did we do there? We went from bigger volume to smaller opening, right? Same amount of airflow, and then that will lead to sound being generated. That's what a partial obstruction does. So let me show you what that looks like. Okay, so play this here. You can see as we zoom in, at this level, it's open, air is flowing, no noise. Now here, as the tissues start to get closer to one another, you will start to have noise because we went from bigger opening, smaller opening, the whistle effect. Now, what we'll see next is the flopping of tissue. Kind of subtle, but if you look here, I'll replay that. I'll go back like, look over here where my mouse is. Right there. It's going to flop back and forth. Now we'll also generate snoring. All right. So that's what's going on. And the reason it's important to know that is because the worse this sound is indicative, and also the pattern of it. Because this pattern of continuous can easily morph into this sleep apnea. Because if you have this pattern, that means you have a partial obstruction. That's what you're rocking with. And just like a almost closed door is close to being fully closed, same thing with a partially obstructed airway to a completely obstructed airway. This will be the progression, is that you'll have this kind of snoring, that leads to this kind of snoring, and then this just gets louder and louder. That's the progression. And it's important to know this because snoring intensity is one indicator for the severity of sleep apnea. So here's a graph, here's a paper, I'll look it up, there it is. But the main finding to be aware of is when you look at the up and down part, that represents the snoring intensity. If you look on the sideways part, left to right, this is sleep apnea severity. Each dot represents a person. As their snoring is worse, their sleep apnea is more often worse. That's the general trend. So that's why it's important to know, one, if you have snoring, two, how loud is it? Because as we'll talk about in a moment of what that means, what you can do, and how you want to go about that. But also for you to have like that reality check of like, oh man, like my snoring's pretty bad. That means my sleep apnea is pretty bad. And not only you know that, but also your partner, if you have a bed partner, or even just someone in the same house, or you just go, I don't know, to like a hotel or a hostel or something, like people will know because it's very, very loud. And that's actually why snoring intensity is one of the things that will be a predictor of your partner's sleep as well. Because it keeps them up in the middle of the night, hurts their sleep, and then both of you are tired, irritated, stressed out, and then just have worse sleep. It just becomes an absolute menace. And then the alternative, the good old sleep divorced, at times it's like, why be together? You can't even like share same bed, right? So that's why being able to do something about snoring, sleep apnea, so, so important. All right. Now, what what do we do? What do we do with snoring? All right. First thing you should do is, well, you already watched this video, so you already did that. But in all seriousness, the basic idea is to measure, decide and act, and then remeasure. And it's almost this cycle, if you will. And I'm gonna, if I can find it. I think I just pressed this button. Yeah, there we go. I'm gonna add a arrow here. Okay, it's the best arrow I could do. Give me a break. In that you want to first initially measure what's going on, decide what the heck you're gonna do about it, and then remeasure and then like redecide. That's it. We'll get into some specifics in a moment. So just stick with me. That's the general framework here. Because if you don't know what you're tracking, you can be doing things and you don't know what's changing. Yes, it's good to have data like something with Snore Labs. A deeper dive on that in a second. But also just subjectively. What is your partner saying? How are you feeling? How are you functioning during the day? Super, super important. So in doing this, I recommend some sort of phone application that has a microphone. Snore Labs is one common one. Shut Eye is another one. I'm not really partial to either. Okay. None of them are going to be absolute perfect, but they can give you some precision. As long as your bedroom environment isn't like by a busy window or you got all this other noise or the AC kicking on all the time and all that stuff. This is one thing people don't talk about. This is kind of like a secret of these apps. You need to have a relatively low noise environment in the first place for these to pick up your snoring accurately. Because if you have someone else sleeping with you or something like that, it can start to mess up the data in a way. But sometimes a little bit of data is better than no data. Nonetheless, you want to have something to track your snoring. Now, you can also track other things. I don't want to get too far into this because that's not the point of this episode. You can also track like oxygen overnight and all that. But we're talking about snoring, so we're going to keep it at that. Snoring, you're going to track that. Then you're going to decide to do something, okay? Not just like, okay, let me see how this goes. Because if you don't do anything, nothing's ever going to change. Okay, you need to make a decision because the people who make the most decisions with their health are the people who overcome these issues. All right, there's very few people I've ever worked with. They're like, yeah, this is the first thing I'm going to try. Like, no, they've gone through a lot of things, and that decision making muscle is so critically in the journey to overcome, eliminate snoring and sleep apnea attached to it. So, in making decisions, there's going to be many, many things would be up your alley. It could be nasal breathing exercises. For instance, if you do some like alternate nasal breathing where just before bed, you hold one nostril, breathe in this way, hold it, exhale, and you do that. You do like 5 in, 5 out. There's different variations. You can increase the time of the exhale. You can add a hold in the middle. That will start to open up those nasal passages a little bit to help you not only breathe more easily through your nose, which will help reduce snoring, but also it'll slow down your breathing overall, which is good. Because I know we think, oh, why don't I want to slow down my breathing? It's already stopping. Well, here's the thing. The reason a slower inhale is going to be better, because when we actually look at this, a little counterintuitive. This tissue, as it's going in here, it's getting pulled down. It's getting pulled down. Not just by gravity, because this doesn't happen to everyone, but when you have air going through here and this inhale, okay, going to the left of this screen, that is creating a negative pressure like a vacuum, and it's going to suck the back of the tongue and the palate down into your airway. But if you have a slower, steadier inhale, that suction force is reduced, and then this happens far less, And then a partial obstruction goes to a no obstruction. So just something to look for there. Okay, so we talked about breathing exercise as one. Mouth tape is another. Let me caution you against this. This would be something where if you're having, let's say, if we're looking at this curve here, if you're honestly having like moderate sleep apnea and above, I haven't personally seen it with our clients. There's no evidence in the research literature to suggest that mouth taping is helpful for moderate and above or moderate and severe sleep apnea. In mild, it's been shown to be helpful, but in that study, it was like an AHI of 8, which is basically barely sleep apnea, is where improvements were shown. Nonetheless, it is something you can try, but do be cautious about that. You can also try mouth guards as well. And as you're trying these things, that's why these apps are great, because you can actually track what you're doing. What's the intervention you're doing? What's the effect it's having, right? So like a simple mouth guard, or even positional therapy, like if you're on your side, right? Being able to maintain that. Either way, here's the thing. I'm not sure which one's going to do the trick for you. I don't, I know we've spent some time together, right? But I don't really know you fully. Okay? Because this is a video on the internet. But nonetheless, like sometimes people have like a real home run with mouth tape, or they knock it out of the park with nasal breathing, but you don't know unless you do the things. All right? Because a lot of what we're doing for people is being able to analyze and see what is going to hit it out of the park for them. But as you're doing this by yourself, that's something you use your time and effort to do. And then as you're doing things, then you want to remeasure and see how you're doing. Oh, my snore scores or my noises are going down. Great. Fantastic. Oh, this made no difference at all. Great. I know that these things are not doing the trick for me. Or maybe even going beyond some of these direct things, like you could see, well, how does cutting out cheese at dinner time? I don't know. I just picked a random nutrition thing. Don't try to say I said not eating cheese will cure sleep apnea. Um, but like even looking at other factors like bedtime, what you're eating, maybe physical activity you got during the day, there's so many things you can do to be able to figure out, hey, what is having an impact, what is not having an impact, and that gives you that empowerment of you knowing how your body's responding, and you're able to see how you're improving. Now, one really, really tricky thing, okay, I know we're like a little bit late into this video, but this is important. If you have sleep apnea and you're tracking your snoring, it may get worse before it gets better because of this here. So if you go from sleep apnea type snoring to regular snoring, you'll go from this bottom graph to the top graph. The top graph may be more overall noise. You may have a higher snore score. And then it will continue to go down. So some people, sometimes they're doing well, and then they had this sudden jump in how much they're snoring based on their app, but maybe their partner's like, yeah, it's not that bad, etc. This is what's going on because you're transitioning from the really loud, silent pattern to a more continuous pattern. And then some people kind of freak out. They're like, oh, I was doing so well, and now I'm not. But that's just what's going on. So, like, now you know. Okay, that was your reward for sticking around with me. All right. So that is almost everything you would ever need to know about snoring. I'm sure there's always going to be more, but did my best to be able to walk you through. Here's what it sounds like. I didn't do enough snoring demonstrations myself. Sorry, I mean, I planned on it, but I was like, let's not embarrass myself too much. But nonetheless, you have your information there of what to do, what to measure, and all of that. Now, in going through this, a lot of people, they want to just do that. That's why a lot of people are watching videos online, be able to learn information, implement it for themselves, and be able to learn more, do more, and apply it, and get their health from, down here and bring it up. Now, there are some people who they want to be on the absolute fastest path to snoring less, sleeping better, getting off of CPAP, ditching the mouth guards, and all of that. Now, if that is you, then what I want to offer you, if I can find it, let's go through all of our episodes here. Here it is our complimentary free one-on-one evaluation session. All right. That's where we're talking about what's going on with you, your issues, your goals, so we can help you identify what those can be. And if we can help you achieve that, because then we'll talk like, okay, here's the paths ahead. And if we're the best, we'll walk you through those details of what that can let pineapple. We'll go through what that can look like. But if not, if we can't help, if we know it's best to refer you elsewhere, then we'll simply do that. So either way, go to ochnow.com/talk for your free 45-minute one-on-one evaluation session. Once you go to this link, you'll fill out a form, and then it'll take you to the calendar, pick your date and time, and we just give you a call. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope to talk to you soon. Bye.